This video is brought to you by the Corsair Vengeance K70 and K95. These fully mechanical keyboards are designed for performance gaming. Visit corsair.com/vengeancegaming to learn more. This, my friends, is a little bit unusual for us. This is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera, and if you're not familiar with Blackmagic, what they've basically done is they've taken the camera industry and kind of given it a wake-up call, given it a shake. With the introduction of their 2.5K Blackmagic Cinema Camera, they introduced like massive dynamic range, which basically amounts to capturing detail in low light and high light at the same time, giving you a lot more flexibility in post-processing to work with the footage. So they introduced that camera for just like wicked crazy low pricing. Then they turned around and introduced a 4K version for $4,000 and a 1080p version for $1,000 and dropped the pricing on the 2.5K to $2,500. So essentially for every line of vertical resolution, you're paying about $1, which is, you know, sounds great on paper and all that, but what do you actually get? And the answer is you get a pretty wicked looking image. We're actually going to include some test footage that Brandon B-roll took with this particular camera, because we've already actually opened it up before at the end of the video, so do check that out. But let's start with what's inside. Instead of including stupid discs, they include, yay, an SD card that has the software and manuals. Unlike the 2.5K and the 4K camera, it doesn't come with a full version of DaVinci Resolve, which is Blackmagic's color correction software. So it just comes with the light version, which it should be noted is actually free for download for anyone. So it's $1,000 software for the full version, so it makes sense that with a $1,000 camera, they didn't necessarily include that. Next inside, we find the power adapter, which you may actually find yourself needing because the integrated battery is not really anything special. There we go, as well as international plugs. So there's our normal US plug, that looks like an EU one, and wherever the heck all these things are from. All right, so they include those, as well as a carry strap. And what's neat about the fact that they include like a wrist carry strap for it is that even though it produces some fantastic images, it is small enough to look like pretty much a normal point and shoot. Now, when it comes to cameras, hardware is a thing, but it's not actually the only thing. Things like codec licensing make a big difference to what kind of an image a camera can produce. So for example, the camera we're shooting this on, the Sony FS700, records in AVC HD, which isn't a fantastic codec in terms of retaining color information. So what that means is that the image might look great to you guys, but if we're shooting in the dark or if we're shooting in non-ideal conditions, we might not be able to play around as much with how the image looks in post-processing. Not so with this particular camera. Out of the box, it comes with Apple's Prores Codec, which means basically, well, the opposite of what I just said. So there's more that you're going to be able to work with in post. It's better than H.264, which is better than AVC HD. And coming in a couple of months with a firmware upgrade, you're actually going to be able to use lossless Cinema DNG, which is basically almost like it's raw, but it's not uncompressed raw. So there'll be a little bit less flexibility, but you still should be able to do an absolute butt ton with it in post, given that you can shoot in raw and it has 13 stops of dynamic range. So we've only found a handful of cards that'll work with it without dropping frames, including this Sony UHS-1 card, which is their 94 megabyte per second card. So that's usually a read speed spec, which is sort of irrelevant when you think about it because writes are what people actually care about on these devices. So it comes only with a micro 4/3 mount, unlike the 2.5K, which also has an EF mount option. But unlike the 2.5K camera, this one has an active micro 4/3 mount, which means you can use lenses that control the aperture electronically versus being stuck with manual lenses. So I think for that reason, a lot of people were going with the EF mount on the 2.5K. So now you don't have to be quite as concerned about the lack of mounting options. Speaking of lack of options, there's not a whole lot in terms of stuff going on here. So on the back, you find a large LCD that, quite frankly, it's kind of poopy. It's not that great. You're going to want to use an external viewfinder. The good news about it is it's about as big as they could have made it, and it features a 1:1 zoom in so you can get your focus right. So at least it has that, but color really doesn't look true to life on it at all. You've also got controls over here, so you can navigate the menu this way. The power button is here. And then on the bottom of the camera, you find a simple tripod screw-in. You've also got the battery compartment down here, which also contains the SD card reader and the USB slot for pulling data off of it. Speaking of batteries, the battery is nothing special. However, already, even though it just launched, you can get cheap batteries, so don't worry too much about it. In fact, it's recommended to just carry like a Chewbacca-like strap of batteries if you're going to shoot with this thing on an ongoing basis. Now this is cool. On the top of the camera, you've also got another tripod mount, so this is going to work with standard accessories, like whether you want to put like, I don't know, like a hot shoe adapter there, or whether you want to mount whatever it is you want to mount to it. That's really handy. And then you've also got dedicated playback buttons, as well as, of course, a record button, since this does happen to be a camera. Which brings us to the left-hand side of the camera, where we really find the bulk of the I/O. So there's the power in, micro HDMI, microphone in, more on that in a moment, headphones out for monitoring, as well as a LAN C connection, which is used for remote control of the camera. It's more of a pro-grade feature. Now that microphone in, right now, because the preamp built into the camera just isn't anything special, levels are very, very low. So most people are using external audio recorders in order to get reasonable audio with the video that they're shooting with this camera. It's possible someone will release a dedicated design for this camera preamp, so you'll actually be able to use the audio input on board. Otherwise, it's really recommended to use a Zoom or some other kind of external audio recorder. Now, before we dive into the menus here, I just want to talk a little bit about the overall build quality of the camera. It is absolutely beautiful. The soft touch finish on the front of the camera has just the right amount of grip that you never feel like you're going to drop it or lose it, but without feeling like it's just going to flake off and peel off. The back has a slightly more subtle, slightly more plastic feel to it. And then the middle piece right here, so the top piece that wraps all the way around the side and to the bottom, is solid aluminum and just feels absolutely fantastic. The camera does get a little bit warm in your hands, so that should be noted. However, if you buy a ruggedized case for it or something like this, you will likely never notice those things. So let's dive into a couple of things in the menu here. So number one is white balance. So if you're evaluating the temperature, so the color of your light, the screen doesn't really help. The profiles it shoots in don't really help because they tend to be quite flat. And the fact that there's not much granularity to the white balance selections will make this a little bit challenging for some people. However, if you're willing to work around it, then you can. And particularly if you're willing to grade it in post, you can usually compensate for any inaccuracies while you were shooting. Another thing of note, so there's all the microphone options, although you probably won't use them unless something sort of dramatic happens. Over here we've got our recording options. So ProRes right now is the only option for recording format. Dynamic range, you can select either film or video, and then you can go anywhere up to 30 FPS. This is really cool. So this is a time-lapse interval. You can set frames, seconds, or actually up to 10 minutes. So it has dedicated time-lapse built into the camera. And then finally, we've got more kind of similar settings, including HDMI overlays or not overlays. I think that pretty much wraps it up, other than to address the black dot issue. So very, very strong light sources have been actually blacking out. You can fix them in post, but Blackmagic has a firmware fix that'll be coming very, very soon for that. And I think, thank you for checking out my unboxing of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera. Don't forget to subscribe to Linus Tech Tips for more unboxings, reviews, and other computer videos. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it, and leave a comment if you thought we did a reasonably good job of something that really we don't talk about that much. Also, last thing guys, if you're looking at this going, oh wow, it's like a pro grade camera for like $1,000 and sounds like a great deal, maybe I just won't buy like some other camera, bear in mind, the way that this works, the footage you get out of it will have to be worked on. There's no such thing as you take a video with this camera of your kid's birthday party and it looks perfect out of the camera. This is a pro-grade equipment. They expect that you know how to use software like Premiere or Resolve or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just something to bear in mind here, guys.